So thank you for joining us today. We're going to talk about UNM Jobs 2.0, the new version of UNM Jobs. My name is Emily Luhman. I'm an HR consultant in the Office of Human Resources. I was on the implementation team. Joining me today is Jeff O'Keefe. Do you want to say who you are?
I'm Jeff O'Keefe. I'm with IT. I was involved with the design team since the initial purchase of the product. So it was 2.5 years ago.
Okay. So, sorry, I'm going to mess with my little thing here today. Here, it's not quite sticking. There we go. So here, I thought I kind of had a thought about how we can handle today's presentation. I have two thoughts, depending on who's in the audience today. So this system so UNM Jobs 2.0 rolled out April 3rd. Is that right, Amber? Is that right? April 3rd? Okay. So it's been alive for approximately 2 months now. By a show of hands, how many in this room have used it and are familiar with UNM Jobs? Okay, so quite a few. To be honest, that's what I suspected. So the presentation I have today is kind of based on some of the demos that we did earlier. So I'm just gonna, as a refresher, kind of go over that at a very high level. And then in the end, we're gonna have a demo where it's an opportunity for you to ask your questions given your experience using the system. I'm sure as you've used it, there are some things maybe you want to know why they're that way, or how do I do this? And I've also identified some kind of common problems or issues that we have experienced since the rollout 2 months ago. So again, just to do a kind of a quick overview of what our goals were for implementing UNM Jobs 2.0. If you want to move the slide, so what to expect, I kind of covered that. So here's what's different. Hopefully this is consistent with what you've experienced by using the system. So the applicant experience is more modern. So if any of you, how many of you looked at the external career site, what the external applicants apply through? How many of you think it's better than what existed before? No one? No one, really?
It looks way better.
It looks way better. Okay, it looks way better. It's got pretty colorful pictures, right? So it does look way better. The experience is different. The applicant experience is different. That's correct. And the change takes a little bit getting used to. Can search for positions with more efficiency. We're able to tailor the search ability of the site for applicants to meet the different needs of the faculty, staff, and student general employee groups that we have here at UNM. So if you're searching for a faculty position, you'll get slightly different options than if you're searching for staff. So I'm standing right in front of you. So we're able to customize it in that way. They're more fresh and newer, user-friendly. There's also now an internal career center. This probably, in terms of the applicant experience, is the biggest change now that we offer a site that's specific to UNM employees. So in terms of applicant management, we've streamlined access to the system. There's only one bar role is required. No longer like, I need dean and director, I need this one, I need that one, I need whatever. There's only one. If you're gonna be manipulating or changing or managing your search within the system, there's only one bar role. You don't have to, so hopefully that has made things simpler. We're able to customize the experience for each employment area. How many of the folks in here work with faculty, staff, and student hires? I see at least a couple, right? So now you don't have to wade through all of the staff fields when you're trying to do a faculty hire. You see what's specific to the type of hire you're trying to do. Now, that's also caused some of the challenges in the system. If anyone, I see people nodding, they will know. So that's one of the things we're gonna talk about today, why that is and ways to troubleshoot that. Improved efficiency and automation in the automation of offer letter generation. This probably, current state, is the biggest change with the system that we have. Now offer letters for faculty, staff, and student, with the exception of HSC faculty, are generated directly from the system. They're signed electronically. So hopefully that's speeding up the issuance and the delivery of the offer letter to new hires. And then we have, I hear chuckles. It's new. You got to bear with us. Automation and customization of onboarding processes based on employee type. This is probably the to be developed part of this system. We have some automated onboarding already built in, but to be coming is even more of that. I look at Jeff because he's up to his eyeballs in all of that automation, but it's soon to be finalized in the next couple of weeks, which will, one, allow for the delivery and submission of new employee paperwork electronically, the creation of their records, the notification of when they can get their net ID, those kind of things. It'll automate that process, so the turnaround time and the communication to new employees will get much better. So more to come on that front. So I'm going to skip over this because you guys, for the most part, have been in the system. We've had to get used to some new terms with the new system. Most importantly, the primary terms that you have to get used to are in place of an action. It's a requisition or requisition request if you're using a UNM temps, if you're hiring a UNM temps. And then in place of a hiring proposal, it's a hiring request. And then the approval rules. This has also one of probably been the biggest points of confusion within the system. I hear chuckles, so I'm taking that as agreement. Is that, one of the drawbacks and benefits of the old system was that the approval queue was predefined. The approval rules were predefined. If you worked in an academic area, it has to go to your college or dean. There was a college dean role, right? It was very clear. In the new system, there's nothing's required, right? We don't prescribe to you what that approval process is. Each employment area has standards, each college, department, division has standards as to what they require, but we don't prescribe that as with the exception of one. You have to do at least one, which is HR, or the appropriate faculty, appropriate employment area. I listed those here for the 4 different employment areas that oversee hiring transactions that happen within UNM jobs. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit more detail later. Okay, you can move on. And then another point of contention that I think, or point of confusion, that is an improvement but also can be confusing at times, is the email notifications. With this system, there's lots and lots of email notifications. If any of you tried to post a job, you probably received like 5 email notifications that your request has been approved. We try to set up the system in a way, and it is flexible in such a way that we can inform you more readily when actions are happening in the system, approval of requisitions, issuing of offer letters, those kind of things. But the challenge is that it's also somewhat inflexible, so we can't customize it enough to allow for every single permutation of experience, so which is what causes you to get multiple of the notifications of the same type. And we'll talk about that and why that is a little bit later, so to help hopefully kind of inform you as to what's going on there. So, next slide. Demo time. So, sorry, you're gonna have to bear with me as I sign in to the system. So if you want to close that. So as Jeff is getting it up, if you can go to pilot. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I want to hear from you guys. What are some questions that you may have having used the system? What are some of the things that you maybe want to have explained a little bit more? Renew?
Okay, so I don't know if I'm doing this wrong or not, but when I was doing faculty hire,
Mm-hmm.
do you have to go in as a user do you have to sign in as a faculty hiring thing? Because when I go in as a faculty hire, I always get that approver, and it's an HR approver, and there's no HR for faculty.
There's no HR for faculty.
So I have to always put a person in there because it will not even let me save it as a draft.
You're talking about it like in the approval queue?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so what you're supposed to do for faculty, and this is true for HRs or for staff, student as well, is they each have those generic approval roles, which on the presentation, which you can find afterwards, I've listed what they are. And they all are like first name office, last name approver. So when you go to look for that user and to set up your approval queue, you're going to look for, if you just generically search by last name approver, you'll get all of them. And you would just pick the appropriate, the first name will be OFAS in the case of a main campus faculty. Yeah, and so what I would recommend, it is there in, OFAS is the first name, yeah. Oops.
But why can't you even just save it as a draft without?
You can't save it as a draft. Okay, yeah, that's a good question. So you can't save it as a draft until you've entered all of the required fields, which we tried it, which you can't really tell you very well. So I'm going to stand over here by Jeff because I need him to navigate for me in this. You have to get through all of the required fields in order to save the requisition. So if you're trying to save it before you've entered some value in there, it won't let you. So an approval is required. So you have to enter something there before you can save it as a draft. That section at the bottom where you designate like the priority or the hire date, targeted hire date, stuff we don't even really use, the system requires it. So you have to enter it before you can save it. Yeah. And I think in particular, the really frustrating pieces are the stuff in the top section where we can't tell you what's required. We try to put an asterisk next to the name, but we can't make it in red. It's a limitation of the system. And so there you're going to go back to each employment area SOPs to identify which field is required. So once you get used to it, you don't have to guess. Until you get used to it, you don't have to guess. Yeah.
I'll give you more real estate here.
Okay. So here, I am logged in as a hiring manager. So Renu had some questions. Does anyone else, before we go through some of the things we have identified? You're going to hold it like that? Can you? How long before your arm gets tired? Is there any?
Get student posting jobs.
Okay.
Because I help students, I'm an advisor, and so we look for jobs for students that they could possibly apply that meet their requirements, right?
Okay.
So once a month we pull like 5 jobs that they could apply, but now we can't look into it unless we sign in. Is that a way around to look at student jobs particularly? Because when I sign in, I look at faculty or staff jobs. That's what I can search.
So to be honest, I'm going to maybe look to Jeff to see if you know a little bit more about how the student jobs work. To find the student jobs, the career site is behind an authentication. And that's to prevent non-students from applying to jobs. Because the thought is that if you're a student at the university, you have a UNM NetID and password to which you can authenticate to access the Career Center. It's my understanding, though, that anyone who has a UNM NetID, is this true, Jeff? If anyone who has a UNM NetID can authenticate past there and see the student jobs, is that true?
Yes.
Yeah. So you shouldn't be limited to the, and we can actually try that too, to run through that. So we'll do that in a minute when we get to the career site. But we'll try to do that and see what happens. But you should still be able to authenticate through to look at the student jobs.
Can you also just show me that where you go in and you just put a OFAS as first?
Yep. So the approvals is one of the sections I'm going to talk about. So I guess we'll just dive right in. So one of the things, I mentioned in the little intro, we can customize things by employment area. That's great because when I'm doing a faculty requisition, I don't want to look at all those stupid staff fields because they got so many of them, which I used to criticize when I was over in faculty land. But when I moved over to HR, now I like them. But and they're necessary. So we're in the test site of the system. And I'm logged in as a sample hiring coordinator, which is the role that most of you would have. So this access should be similar or identical to the access that you have in the real live site. So it's important to know before starting a requisition which employment area your user is formatted in. If you remember in the old system, you could change user types. Here we don't have user types. You have one user, but you change the associated employment area with your user in order to make sure that you can see the appropriate fields for the type of hire. So there's a couple of ways to figure that out. In the SOPs, we probably direct you to go to admin. Oops, it's a hover over. And users, and to search for yourself. But if you just want to check to see what you're logged in as, because what will happen is that your user should stay in the format of the employment area that you last selected. So if you were working on a staff position, it should stay as staff the next time you log in. If you're working on faculty, it should stay as faculty the next time you log in. So if you weren't sure, because you've been working on a couple of different things.
The only caveat to that is that if you have any kind of a change inside of Banner that affects what your user record inside of TMS looks like, it will reset you back to whether or not you're staff or faculty or student. And so that would be the only time that if you had a name change or it had a job change, those kinds of things.
Updated your supervisor.
Updated your supervisor. Those will result in a new user record being sent over to UNM jobs, and that would then reset you back to staff.
Is there a way to automate that? Like when you're actually doing the actual recruiting part of the management, and you actually select the actual student, faculty, or anything, just that way it actually sets up the admin to actually set it up with the appropriate area? No. You just have to always do the user?
Because this system's kind of, I would say maybe kind of like user-based. The experience you have is based on how your user is formatted. And so you have to make sure that your user is formatted appropriately to have the correct experience.
Are you guys any closer to possibly improving the change of the user to be at least just a refresh and not have to log out and log back in?
Yeah, that's one of the frustrations with the system. I don't believe there's anything we can do about that. It just has to refresh, the log out, log back in.
But you can't just refresh, you have to actually log
Right, you have
out
to reset by
and
logging
then
out, logging
go
back in.
back in.
Yeah, yeah.
Finish that game.
No. So, but to check what what employment area you're in, if you're not sure, under the home, there's this universal profile. How many of you in here have actually played around with it and looked at your universal profile? A couple of you? Okay. So for right now, the universal profile is not necessarily all that informative. Oops, sorry. And so, but as we implement the performance management piece of this system, it may become more and more. You may reference or access this page more and more. You'll see, so I'm in as my test person's universal profile. And one of the first things I'll see under my name, Sam Test, is staff. That's the employment area that I'm in. So if you want a quick reference, that's how you can find out. And I think, can you even change it from here? There's been some updates to the user interface. So things are changing with the system all the time. So those things may get better over time. But current state, you have, like for your question, Estelle, log out, log back in. So this is how you can tell what employment area you are. Some of you who've played around in here may have noticed that you can build your resume by clicking on the resume tab. You don't have to do this. There's no requirement to do this. You can, and if you choose to, when you go to apply for a job internally within the Career Center, the stuff that you filled, the information you filled out in those fields will pull in to your application material. It can save you a step. If you're so inclined to do that. What's interesting, at least last time I checked this, there's been, like I said, there's updates to the system all the time, that if you fill it out here, it'll populate to the Career Center, but if you fill it out in the Career Center, it doesn't populate back necessarily, so little FYI. So the other thing that I just like to point out under the universal profile is if you're someone who approves requisitions or approves hiring requests as they come in, you can interact with them in a couple of ways in order to review and approve those requests. One of those ways is under the Recruit tab, which is probably how we direct you in the SOPs that the employment area is built. But you can also interact with them through your universal profile. So as we start to use this system for things other than hiring, you may be going in here and you'll have a complete list of your actions, performance reviews, hiring actions, what have you. So if we look under requests, This person, I believe, has a couple. So they have an offer letter and a requisition to approve. So what's also kind of strange is it lets you go in, this is a requisition, and it lets you do it right from, it lets you approve or deny right from the icon there. The other one, which is an offer letter, it does not. It makes you go in and look at it. I don't know why that's different, but it is. Though I do not recommend just clicking that button. The expectation is that you're approving it, you look at it. So, so a little tip there.
Those are links, all right.
What, these are links. Yep, so if we were to click on them, so let's look at the offer letter, click on the title. It will take us in, or that took us into the, sorry, to the requisition. Cancel. So that's another tip I think you have to do. Is it this thing? It gives you this, an overview. So it takes you right into the offer details that you would approve there. This may or may not be accurate based on what I filled out, like actual information. So it takes you to that summary page of the offer details. And here you can approve and deny this, or you can download that. It says download offer letter. You're just gonna get a download of this, of the replication of the details. So you can do that there. And I believe if we click on the person, it's going to take you into the person. Oh, look at their resume. Isn't that nice? Minty swirl. So that's kind of actually what I did there, is another kind of quirk of the system and clicking around. So generally when you see things like the title of a job, that's going to take you into the requisition. It's going to take you into the details of the requisition. When you see a person or the list under the applicant, we'll talk about that. We'll go into manage requisitions and look at that. When you start to see like names, it's going to take you into an applicant. So unlike the old system where you just clicked in and got everything, you got to kind of watch where you're clicking. Because I know even myself, having been in the system for, I don't know, 2 years now, seems like from a really long time, I still want to always click on the name of the job to see everything.
So this is the person that's keying in the requisition that sees it.
This is a person who's been identified to approve these items.
Okay, because there's the person that keys them in and there's a person that approves them.
Mm-hmm.
And
Correct.
so as the approver, can you go in at any point and see where it's at as far as the posting and all that?
Oh, that's a good question. The approvers is somewhat limited, probably not through this view. You can see your approval history, whether you approved it as completed or not. But in terms of, as the approver, whether that's been posted or whether the requisition has been posted or the final approval has been given, that's a good question. I'm not sure if they can see that or not. Let's see if this person has any. I think my inclination is to think they can only see their history of their approval, unless they have the hiring coordinator role. And so my recommendation for folks is, even if you're like, let's say you're a director or someone who may not be doing the day-to-day processing of the hiring events, that's somebody else in the department. Even if you don't need that kind of access to manipulate information within the system, if you want to view, request the hiring coordinator role, because that will give you the ability to view and edit, if you are so inclined, all of the hiring activity that goes within the orgs that you have permission to see. So in that case, they could then monitor the progress of the hiring activity that goes on underneath them.
I think I think about that, but I'm not sure if I can eliminate it.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that, because one of the things I was going to talk about is, how do you know if it's posted? Because that's not so easy to figure out. So yeah, good question. Yeah.
Can you add the approver in as an additional owner to whoever's
Mhm.
creating it, and then
Sure.
that would give them the access to that
Yeah.
information?
Yep, you can add them in as an owner, and depending on their, because you can have multiple owners. What?
Well, giving ownership, adding them as a second owner to the rec gives them the access to the history of the
Right.
status of the rec, but they're still, well, I guess it gives them both then the role of editing and then
No, it does
editing?
not let them edit.
Just lets them see everything,
Lets them see.
okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
I mean, I've had some issues where we actually had the approver on the actual thing, and they declined it because they said that the approver cannot be the owner.
Well, so I think that's a miscommunication of the intent of what's going on. Because if assigning so the idea is that the person creating the requisition isn't the one approving the requisition. If you're assigning a secondary owner, so your manager or whomever can see, put that in the comments. Because I think what we're not understanding, or what whoever is approving that isn't understanding the intent. And also, I can speak in that regard to staff. If you need to also check with the various employment areas to make sure that they're following their procedure too. They may have little quirks and things that they do or do not allow. But if you're putting somebody there as a secondary owner so they can see, that's different. You just have to clarify why you're doing that in the comments.
And as a secondary owner, do they have to complete the training and bar role, or no? They don't?
No, so one of the benefits and just points of complexity of the system is that if you're an employee at the university, you're a user in the system, and you can be assigned in any of those roles when you look at a requisition. Let's look at a requisition because we seem to have a lot of questions about those. So we'll pull one up. You can be assigned an access, be pulled into one of those roles. Now, your permissions are going to dictate what you can do with those within those requisitions. But yes, essentially, if you're a user in the system, you can approve, you can be an owner. You may not be able to do much, but you can be pulled into those fields. Okay. Oops, come on. Come on, mouse. Okay, so let's look at one where I have some people set up. So, core IT services specialist. So here's a requisition. So we've been talking a lot about the information down here, owners and approvers. So we talked about adding a secondary owner. You can do that simply here. So let's go and basically this is a list of everybody who's employed at the university. So if we want to add Chowkey, he doesn't have the president, right? He certainly does not have a bar role to have access to the system. I cannot believe that he does, given everything he has to do. But we can add him as a secondary owner because he's employed at the university. So we don't necessarily like to see multiple owners there. You can have a business reason for doing that. Typically, the person who's listed as the primary owner is the hiring coordinator, the one that's going to be doing the work, the administrative work of the search. But again, you could have a business reason for putting somebody there. Just tell us what it is.
Where do you put that comment?
In the comment where I would recommend putting that is up here a little bit. Here, there's a comments box right there. I don't know if I'm spelling that right. I can't, the font is very small. No, but, so there is where you would put any comments. Anything you want to communicate to us. Because you have to remember that it's going to a big group, so as it goes to the employment area for approval, unless you tell us we don't know what you're trying to do, so we are guessing to a certain extent, so tell us. If you have something specific you're trying to do, tell us. And you would put it in the comments box.
So, is there a way to get an automation for internal and external too? That we don't have to copy and paste on both of them because it takes forever for them to load on each tab.
Unfortunately, not here, no.
Okay.
No. There may be an update that's coming, but no, it exists currently how it is, unfortunately. So kind of scrolling down here to talk a little bit more about owners and approvers. So typically, so in each employee, and partly what makes this section confusing is that each employment area has slightly different rules as to what we require. In every case, the primary owner is normally the hiring coordinator. The hiring manager, in different cases, can be different people. In staff, for HR, I believe we tell you to make it like your departmental level approver. In faculty, we tell you to make it like the hiring official, the chair, the program director, that type of level of person. I'm not sure how student directs you. I suspect they're as close to staff. So this is where you're going to have to refer to the SOPs that each employment area has created in order to make sure you're hitting the appropriate requirements there. And so one of the other points of thing that I was going to point out was the approval queue. As we've talked about, who's had problems with their requisition not being posted? Okay, at least one. I know there's more. So there's a reason for that. And the reason is that here, oops, where's my cursor? Keeps moving around. Under the approvals, we can't send things automatically to the employment area once it's gone through your appropriate level of approval, depending on what that is for your division or college. They are going to dictate who needs to, once it's been originated, who approves it, but the final level of approval has to be the appropriate employment area. So when Renew was talking about, I can't find the faculty one, that's where she has to designate, the final approval has to be the Office of Faculty Affairs and Services, because it going to their queue is what tells them that you have a request that needs to be reviewed and posted. Putting HR there in case of a staff position is what tells them it needs to be reviewed and posted. So if you leave that off, your position will still appear to be approved. It will say that it is open, but it's not posted. And I'll show you how you can figure out that it is approved but not posted.
How did you do the search for the approvers?
Yeah. And so here's what I recommend when adding your approvers. Oops. Wrong one. So I don't recommend, even though our SOPs may tell you to use like a hiring manager, I do not recommend using any of these roles there aside from user. And because you don't necessarily know who's in those roles, if anybody. So like corporation approver is nothing, don't ever use that. But we can't take it away because it's system delivered. Manager is your manager, but it's based on what the information is in Banner. It may or may not be correct depending on how timely your department updates that information. I don't recommend using these roles. I recommend relying on the user feature because if you know they're employed here, they will be a user in the system. So if we have 3 levels of approval, you hit user 3 times, and you click add, and it'll insert 3 levels. And the level of approver, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4. In this case, we had one existing. That's the order in which they will be approved. And so your first level is typically going to be your departmental level approver if it's required for your area. You may have a second level, which may be like your college dean director kind of level. And you can search for them. Here, I'm going to pick on the president today, mainly because his last name starts with A. So you can find them there. And so as we get through the levels, you just kind of pick, you find your people. And the very last level has to be the appropriate employment area. Now, there's no formatting to this. Those employment level rules are not formatted in any kind of way. They're just essentially generic users that have been set up in the system. So if we go and open this box here, and like I recommended before, approver as a last name, you'll see all of them. Everyone with a last name of approver. So Renew, you mentioned OFAS. if we just want to isolate those, OFAS in the first name, and click search again, here's all of the OFAS approvers, and you would just pick the appropriate one, TPT versus non-TPT. So if we just pick that one. Another thing, and so you always have to end with the appropriate employment area. If you don't, they don't know that your position is out there and needs to be reviewed and approved. The other thing too that's kind of handy with this, so this is a user-based system. So if one of these users in in the queue here is unavailable, they're on vacation, who knows, they're just not available to go and approve when it hits their queue, kind of stuck, right? Because it's with them, it's not with a role, it's with them specifically. So what we recommend doing is that if you add this little plus here, you can add within that level, you can add an or to have it be user 1 or user 2. So it'll go to both of them at the same time, and as long as one of them approves it, it'll move on to the next level. So that's a way to prevent it from getting stuck. So does anyone have any more questions about approvals or users or roles within the system?
You can go over the resubmission of a denied if something was
Okay.
missing and got sent back.
Sure.
And processing that.
Yeah. So that's a good question. How many? So have folks had requisitions or hiring requests that have been denied? Yeah. You've experienced it all, I think. What do you hire most commonly?
Students and faculty.
Student and faculty. Okay. What
Yeah.
department? If you don't mind me asking, what department?
Cosmic.
With
And
Cosmic. Okay.
Cosmic and electrical and computer engineering.
Okay.
So.
Sure. So yeah, that can happen. In the staff world, we try not to return too much stuff to you. We try to work with you. In those other areas, they may be more quick to return it for correction. The system says denied. We can't change that. We would prefer a softer term because it's not denied. It's just returned for correction. So, and so what the employment area or whomever is returning it should put comments, which should appear to you not only in the email notification that you received, but will actually show you where you can find them. So let's cancel out of this. So I don't actually want to save any of these changes I did to this fake requisition. So here's your applicant list. This is where you're going to do most of your work, or where you're going to access most of the work that you do through the system. I said before, what I have trouble with even 2 years working with this system is that I always want to click on the name to be brought in to review the applicant pool. The name is going to bring you to the requisition or posting details. To access the applicant pool, you're going to go under here to applicants. It's kind of pieced out like that. I will continually catch myself always clicking on the name when I want to look at applicants. So let's see if I have one that's denied. I do. So another thing, I hope you've had an opportunity that you played around with the search feature. Since as we don't have separate roles by user type, you see everything within the orgs that you have permission to, faculty, staff, student. So if you're trying to isolate what it is you want to look at, you're going to really rely on these search features. So like I'd say I want to just look at denied in this case. Click search. So here we have one that's denied. To see the comments, like I said before, it would be in your approval, the email notification that you received, but it would also be here. Please correct formatting of job ad. Contact OFAS for assistance. The person returning it should put comments as to what needs to be fixed. Now there are 2 ways to resubmit a denied requisition. One way is to go here to this drop down and do copy. Come on, click. And it will replicate what was denied. It will put copy in the title, so you got to make sure you have fixed that. You take that away. And then you can go through and address whatever things needed to be fixed and resubmit it. No. This isn't going to work very well because I'm in as faculty, or I'm in as staff, and this is a faculty. I didn't do what I was supposed to and change my employment area to look at it. So I can't resubmit it because I'm not in the appropriate employment area, and it's telling me some things are required that are not actually on this requisition. Another clue that your employment area is not correct. So, so you can make a copy and then edit. What's nice about making a copy and editing it is that it kind of creates a versioning for yourself. So you can see denied and then the one that will hopefully go through successfully. The other way to do it, but then you can also, depending on how often that's happening to you, you can clutter up your list there as well, is to go into the requisition. Ooh, emergency alert. Amber alert. You know, when I hear those, I'm so ingrained to being like a Midwesterner that I think there's a tornado. So if I like run like to the basement. Well, like the worst thing for me here is those emergency sirens that will go on outside, because in Minnesota, that means a tornado is like coming, is like there. It's here. Seek shelter. So, okay. So the other thing is, if you click on the name to be brought into the requisition for the denied requisition, if you go under this very last thing, requisition status, you can move it back to draft.
And where does the copy go?
I didn't save it, the copy, because
So if you go out and save, where would you go to go look at it?
it would be in your list. It would just be another requisition in your list and have the same title. And hopefully you would have completed what would needed to have been changed, resubmitted it along the approval process. And so it would just be in your list.
When you change it to draft, you don't get a second copy. It just
Correct.
changes that original
Correct.
back to the revised level.
Mhm.
So you make the correction and then you resubmit.
See, look,
You don't have
no more copy. Yeah.
multiple copies.
You haven't created a new instance. You're still working on the same instance. So I would say what you prefer.
It helps to not clutter your
Sure.
queue.
Especially if you have a
Because then
lot
you
of
don't know
activity.
which
Which one is what? Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So then again, what is the purpose of the copy when you make a copy? Just for
It's just an option. So like copy can be helpful too, is if you're, let's say it's not denied, it's just you're doing a similar posting, and since you don't want to start from scratch, you can go in there and copy it, and then you're not starting from scratch. So,
So on that note, might it be a good idea to maybe call it your template and let it sit in your queue? That way you copy from a template that you duplicate. And then you have to recreate those.
I would be a little bit hesitant to recommend that because for things like faculty, that may be perfectly okay. For staff, where a lot of the posting relies on the position description and those can change over time, that copy may be of an old version. I would recommend going out and starting new to make sure you've got the most updated qualifications. But for faculty, absolutely, because they don't have that. So, yeah.
So you said if you're in the middle of it and you're already a staff, you're not faculty, so you can't submit it, what would you do to go back?
Yeah, you're kind of like out of luck at this point, is that you would lose what you did. You'd have to,
Really?
yeah, because I can't save that. Like that example where I was copying and it said I needed a complete consultant and staff type or something, and I can't see those because I'm in as, I was in a faculty, it told me to do the staff fields, but I was in a faculty requisition where they're not available. So I can't do it, I can't save it. I have to get out, change my employment area, log out, log back in, recreate.
So when you're changing your employment area, you're going up there to admin, right?
Yep. Yep. Always remember to do that. Check what it
We
is.
need to figure out how to get that division
you
of
just
U
show
value
how you
populate
change it?
on the
I
main
know.
screen.
Sure. You want me to show you how to change it? Okay. So admin users. So this is something that actually there was an update and this changed. So so I'm in as Sam Test is my name. So if I go and look for myself, All right, what are you doing now? I don't know what that did. So we click on the name.
It's true. Didn't expect me to smile before. In the winter,
And edit now lives down at the bottom. And here, you go and select, remove that. Go in, open it, pick the one that you want. Say it's faculty. Save is now at the bottom. Like when the user interface update happened, it took me forever to find that because it's way in the corner. Save, log out, log back in, and it should refresh.
So then you said if you have been working on faculty, log out, log back in, you're still in faculty.
You should be, yes. Unless, as Jeff identified, there's been some change to your record and banner, changed your name, got a job change, they submitted like a supervisor change to you, then it will refresh back to the employment type that you are, which probably everybody in this room is staff. It'll go back to that. But unless that's happening, or we do some kind of refresh to the system, you'll stay how you were the last time you logged in.
The user update integration happens 4 times over a 24-hour period. And so it's at 3 a.m., 9 a.m., 3 p.m., and 9 p.m. And so if you had a change between after lunch, but before the 3 p.m., it will set you back from faculty to staff.
But that should be the minority of cases. That should not really happen to you very often. If that's happening to you all the time, please call us because something's wrong. So, I mentioned before, somebody have a question or just coughed? How do you know, one of the points of confusion that I wanted to kind of review is how do I know if my job is posted? We get that question all the time. Because you got the email notification saying it was approved or final approval received. How do you know it was posted? Because that does not mean that it was posted. So if we go back to our applicant list here. Oh, I'm in denied. I don't have any more that are denied. Here's how you would know. So here it tells you the status, what it is. So open, you would assume, oh, this thing is posted, right? I got the final email. It says open. It's not pending approval anymore. That doesn't mean it's not posted. It doesn't mean it's posted. What tells you it's posted is the number here in the posting column. It can be a little bit tricky because, for example, if the position is still open, but maybe it's no longer posted externally, that will go back to 0 because the postings are no longer active. It'll tell you how many active postings you have. So like in this case where this accountant 3 that's open but has 0 postings, no applicants, it's probably something went wrong. You can check by going over here to this drop down where we found copy. You'll also find some additional options that might be helpful to you. One is edit postings. Now you can't edit these despite its name, but you can see where the employment area has posted your job. So like in this case, we haven't posted anywhere, probably haven't done something right. We probably haven't done our job. So you should call us to make sure that we fix that. But here, so this case, I think I'm in a staff posting. You would see default selected, staff selected. If you had requested any higher ed jobs or jobbing or anything, those would be selected. This is a way for you to double check our work. One of the things that makes this system nice is that it's transparent. You see what we do, we see what you do. So if you requested higher ed jobs and it's not selected there, the employment area didn't do their job, you should email us to say, hey, I need my posting. Post it there. You messed up. And we'll do it. Again, this system is new for us too, so we always ask for your patience as we're working through and improving our processes as well. So you'll see postings here. So these top ones, just to kind of give you an overview of what these are the external postings. So these are things that external non-UNM employees can see. The Career Center, where the internal, where the UNM employees are here under Career Center. And so here, if this was a position that was available externally, this should be completed as well and is also included in the posting list and then the count of number of active postings. So you would see it there. If this is something that's available only to internal UNM employees, whether it's a non-competitive hire where it's just one applicant, or something that you're doing posting competitively, internal competitive, we can, with this option, we can limit that so only certain people can see it. So for example, if you're hiring an administrative assistant for the controller's division, say, as an example, we can limit that to just the controller's division staff. So only they can see the posting. Or in faculty, we tend to do this, not a lot, but every once in a while if there's an administrative, like an associate dean position available in the College of an Anderson School, for example, and it's open to tenured faculty within the Anderson School, we can update it to make sure that only those folks see it. So I got the 2-minute mark. So we've answered some questions today, hopefully answer some the more pressing issues that you have. But with our last 2 minutes, is there any other question that we want to address that we haven't? Sure.
I just have a quick one. I'm a career but I'm also in a lot of search committees.
Okay.
So I already have posting that have several applicants.
Okay.
And I've been trying to use it to resolve phone interview and stuff. Is that working?
It does work. So like you're trying to use the interview functionality, like, are you just trying to change them into the status of that?
Yes.
Use the
So that
functionality?
So if I have 60 applicants, I want to get rid of 20. I'm trying to use the system to get rid of those 20.
Yeah.
So I don't have to see them again.
Yeah. Right, so then what you would do, so the phone interview is so if you move them to that status, they're gonna remain active in that status. It's a note that they're at the phone interview stage or the campus interview stage. But if you no longer wanna see them, you're gonna need to move them to not hired to dispense them out of, and pick the dispensation reason as to why they were not selected. And then they will no longer be active and they'll fall off your list. They're still available to you, they're just not gonna be immediate, you have to go in to find them.
Can you show me how to do that?
Sure.
You just put them with a flag?
No, it's not a flag. It's changing their status. So let's pull up one that has some applicants. So we'll go back to our core IT services position. And so changing statuses in this system is very similar as it is in other cases. I think Donald Duck is one that's going to be hired. But let's say he's not. Let's say these three. Change status. Let's say they all don't meet minimum qualifications. So that we move them to not hired. And then we select the appropriate minimum. So in this case, let's say they're not bona fide. They do not meet minimums. It'll change it for all of them, or you can change them individually. And then you click submit. And they will no longer be active until you it's successful. And they'll fall off your list, so you don't have to see them all the time. Now, if you're just a search committee member, you can't do that. That's a hiring coordinator has to do that. The search committee member, you're essentially just viewing what's active. The hiring coordinator has to do this. So if the committee's made a decision that these folks are no longer bona fide or no longer under consideration, then the hiring coordinator needs to go up and manage the pool. So they fall off your list.
An approver used to be able to do that. So if I'm just the approver, I cannot work with it.
No, if you're just an approver, if you're just a search committee member, a reviewer, is what the rule is in the system, no, you can't. Yeah, but if you need to, like if that's the process in your department where you may be not originating, but you may be managing, that's the hiring coordinator role, so you'd have to talk to your supervisor to see if it's appropriate for you to request that. So you could do it. So. right, so I think that we're out of time. Sorry for being late, a little mix up for the room. But again, my name is Emily with Human Resources. If you have any questions, feel free to call me.